Welcome to Dark Matter Radio. This is your host, Ronnie McLean. Tonight we're going to indulge ourselves into the infinite universe. We're going to see what's out there. We're going to open up our minds. I'm going to ask you to open up your hearts and keep an open mind. For the information that you hear may just shock your mind. Tribal, limited, sovereign, and commercial rights. Oh, what is this? After first discovery, Europeans considered the indigenous nation of North America and anywhere else, and peoples are the Native Americans and people who came afterwards. Any immigrant that occupies or on the lands and living in coexistence and co-creation communities with the original indigenous beings of that land had lost some aspects of their inherent sovereign powers and rights to international free trade and diplomatic relations. Thereafter, they were only supposed to deal with European governments that had first discovered them. Here we go again, first discovered. Now remember, discovering means that it had to be a European nation under Christendom that were able to see the land. They first discovered the land, they were the first to see it from a European aspect of things. Even though that you were there, because they were able to see you, they now own you, the land and everything else. And then they have to follow the other couple of steps, few steps to get in there to actually claim proper title, right? For their legal system. World legal system, their world European legal system that they were putting in place at that particular time. So, and they say, and the reason why they say that you lost some aspects is because you were still able to trade amongst each other and do dealings amongst each other. But anything outside of that grouping had to be done specifically with the Europeans, and that is still being done today. Still to this very day. There's nothing that you can't do, nothing that you can't go unless it is controlled by the European economic system of trade. And that's the international. Anytime you say international, anytime that you say international, you have to understand the only true legal international system is of Europe. Why? Because that's how it was placed in effect when they began to start the Doctrine of Discovery in 1452. You have no rights, sovereignty, right? Contiguity. What does that mean? Under the Doctrine of Discovery, right? Under this discovery, Europeans claim a significant amount of land continuous and to surrounding their actual discoveries and settlements in the New World. Now we're getting into what they began to start putting in place here in the West. Moreover, continually held that the discovery of mouth of a river gave the discovering country a claim over all the lands drained by the river, even if that was thousands of miles of territory. For example, referred to the boundaries of the Louisiana Territory and Oregon country as defined by the United States. Now, when you begin to start saying, how did all these territories actually really develop? That's how they began to develop. They began to develop and began to start taking shape when they began to start surveying how long these rivers go. If you were fortunate and you came among the Mississippi River, my God, that was such a discovery, because now you own the lands and all the lands that feed into it from the mouth of the Mississippi River all the way to the end of it, and anything that feeds into it from any of the surrounding mountains and lands adjacent to that river. That's how you begin to start getting a lot of these maps and dissecting them, right? Through this, number 6, contiguity under the discovery of European claimed lands, right? And then on number 7, tellus nullus, and we discussed that earlier, that this phrase literally means a land or earth that is null or void or empty. The element stated that if lands were not possessed or occupied by any persons or nations, or even if they were occupied, but were not being used in the fashion that the European legal and property systems approved, then the lands were considered to be empty and available for discovery claims. So when you understand this, everybody, understand this. When they say that you were killed off, dead, and everything else by disease or whatever, what they're basically saying is that the land was empty because they didn't look at you as doing the right thing with the land, and they didn't look at you as owning the land, and they didn't approve of you on the land. So they had the ability to be able to brainwash you right off the land and to make you not exist. So you are non-existent entities on the face of this earth. You are somebody, but in their world, you are non-existent. And they treat you that way. That's why they were able to come in here and kill almost 250,000 people a day for almost 150 to 200 years here in the West. When I say in the West, that's North America, and they did the same thing over there in the African nations, Europe, Africa, and Middle East, etc. Right? They killed almost 100 million people plus over there as well, and it's still counting. Right? They're killing hundreds of millions of people. So in order for them to be able to do that in a 150, 200-year period, they had to kill at least 250,000 people a day. A day. Listen to my program on Dark Matter Radio that they killed so many indigenous people to change the climate of the world. Right? The climate of the world actually changed. So this is what that means. Tellus nullus. This phase literally means a land or earth that is null and void or empty of anybody, and that's how they look at you as you're walking around this. I don't care if you're Hispanic. We have to get into that Hispanic thing because Hispanics are not Spanish, period. Hispanics are not Spanish. They're also are not indigenous to the land. They have affiliation to the land by way of mixing with natives or indigenous beings that were here before the people they mixed with came here. Byproducts is what the Spanish calls you, right? You have the same thing going up there in Canada with some of the new indigenous groups that are forming, French indigenous groups, all right? And they're calling them natives now, indigenous natives. Right? They're not actually indigenous because indigenous are people who are actually on the land, who were on the land before anybody else came. They were indigenous. Those were their lands. Anyone that was native to the land were people who came over from another place. Now you have a new classification of people. This is why they call the Hispanics. Those classification of people are people that were that were joined with purposely with native and indigenous people to create a new people for the land. Right? So anybody that considers themselves Hispanic, you got to really go back and start looking at that. I don't care if you're a white Hispanic, black Hispanic, whatever the situation is, Hispanic is Hispanic. You are a hybrid of the people that came over here to rule and run the land. You are not part of the European diaspora. Period. End of story. That is shocking, but that's what it's all about. So we had to get into that Hispanic thing, and any of the other indigenous or groups or anything else like that that has been formulated that is the same basic concepts. Because the French did it, the British did it, the Portuguese did it, right? Which was mixed up in the Spanish area. But all of these European nations did that. They were mixing to formulate their created people, right? Before they had the understanding of what cloning and all that other type stuff is about. But that's serious. So when you take a look at that, really take a look at that. So then we get into Christianity. Religion was a significant aspect of the Doctrine of Discovery, as we discussed. Under the Discovery, non-Christian peoples were not deemed to have the same rights to land, sovereignty, or self-determination as Christians. And this is why, even if you get the right of decolonization, you still don't have nothing, because they never gave you anything back, because the war of the Doctrine of Discovery has never ended. And it won't end until we, as beings of people all over this earth, who are aboriginal and indigenous and native, combine ourselves together and force them to get out of this Doctrine of Discovery. So regardless of who you think you are, right, and even if you are of Christian value, just because you are of native, aboriginal, original, indigenous, you cannot be considered the same as the people who came over here. You just can't. They don't look at you the same as long as the Doctrine of Discovery is in place. I don't care what kind of law they put in place, civil rights and all this other type stuff. The bottom line is that you still don't own nothing, can't own nothing, and will never own anything as long as the Doctrine of Discovery is in place. So we got to wake up. I mean, really wake up as we're getting out our conscious community. I need the conscious community also to have an understanding about this, right? Because this is all this indigenous waking up, the conscious community is all part of the same soulful spiritual aspects of bringing us into fruition, right? Why the Native Americans and other indigenous or native people around the world are unable to do anything about the Doctrine of Discovery? Because they look at you as immigrants. You hold no power in their system. It is the aboriginal and indigenous people of that land that needs to rise up and do that, and you along with them to get that backing and support. Civilization. The European ideals of civilizations were an important part of Doctrine of Discovery, right? And part of discovery. And the ideals of superiority. Europeans thought that God had directed them to bring civilized ways, education, and religion to indigenous people and to exercise patriotism, partnerism, and guardianship powers over them. So, okay, now, this is important. This is the reason why, especially up in Canada, it's so important to understand the reason why they were able to do these schools and the reason why they have these schools in place, even pretty much basically today. Anywhere there's a cross on any native land, you still have civilization part of that Doctrine of Discovery in place, right? You might be fighting for the rights, might be giving you apologies, this, that, and the other thing, but they aren't taking it away because you are still religiously a part of their system, which goes into God directed them, and their God is still directing them to bring civilized ways to you. That's why you're still underneath their system, education system, and the religious system to indigenous people, right? And if they're going to do it to indigenous people, you know, when you start talking about natives who they classify as immigrants have really no power, and those that came after those native people who were combined with the Europeans and natives, they just look at them as their own byproducts. See? And that's how they're trying to get black people to look at them, the so-called black people, to change their title to black people, African Americans, because those were, if they were able to really buy into that, they also become the byproduct of what was left behind when they left, which still gives them the right to rule over you because you are part of their system. You are what they created. So if you keep the designation or whatever they gave you, they're keeping that designation of full ownership over you, still to this very day. So that's the reason why they were able to develop those schools and still keep you into that system, right? You can't get out of the system until the Doctrine of Discovery, the Discovery Doctrine, has been ended. And that's why when you get into the last one, conquest, this element claims that Europeans could acquire Indian land or Indian title by military victory in just and necessary wars. in addition, conquest, was also used as term of art to describe the property rights European claimed to have gained automatically over indigenous nations just by showing up and making the first discovery, just by showing up and taking a look at the land. Now, can you imagine that? Somebody coming into your house saying, oh, I've still seen your house from far. Nobody else has claimed it, and I'm coming in there. This is all my stuff. You guys all now belong to me. You guys belong to me. There's nothing you can say about it. This is what I want you to do. And as soon as you start saying something, you start rising up, they have the ability to slaughter you, kill you, rape you, do whatever they want to do to you, because you are not even considered to be a human being in their world. And in fact, you're actually really non-existent and have absolutely no mental, physical power whatsoever against them. Man, you talk about the law of attraction, the law of vibration, and everything else that they pull into play to do all this stuff in. They had to believe it before they seen it. And when they seen it, they believe it because it materialized, and then they claimed it. And when they claimed it, they claimed you along with it and everything that it had to go with it. So these 10 elements were the beginning of the control of the world and a new system coming out of an old system, which was pure justice, pure love, and caring for a lot of people. That's why